Hey guys, so now we're actually going to do a proper review for the Stands From Up There by Black Country New Road. I really love this album. I love it just as much as when it came out still. I can't see any other album topping this, and it's becoming one of my favorite releases I've ever heard, and I feel like it's going to stay that way. First of all, like the cover art is amazing and all stuff. This isn't about the packaging. Now, if I were to go into start out with a bit of, I feel like every single track has some sort of really unique and interesting build-up. I still haven't, just from listening to it, I still haven't got tired of it. I still just feel the same way of where I listened to before, like I mentioned. And it's a very different direction from their other album, For the First Time, which was a kind of a post-punk and still had a post-rock sound, but it was a post-punk. And but anyways, still had a post-rock sound, but their other album, For the First Time, which you could argue it was more experimental. But I feel like this direction is much more interesting. Far more interesting. And I think For the First Time is a great album too. And it's one of my favorite albums of 2021, and it's grown on me even more since this album came out. But I think they kind of described For the First Time as essentially a collection of studio versions of popular live songs that they've played. So there are some songs, so like Science Fair has a very scary kind of sound, and you hear something like Track X, which is very blissful, and for the most part it has a sound that's pretty consistent, but there's also some sounds that it's kind of weird hearing them together because the album doesn't have a distinct theme, whereas this one does. This has a much more distinct theme of a post-rock and chamber pop sound, with some art rock and some Midwest emo, some indie rock, all this other stuff. It's a much easy listening sound, but it's a lot better, and it's a lot more interesting, a lot more creative in my eyes. I still think For the First Time is great. I just think this one's a lot better, I think. Far more better. So as the first song, Intro, it's essentially just a little jam, and it kind of has the motif heard at the end of Basketball Shoes. And it's a decent song, but it's a decent intro, but one of the weaker songs, just for obvious reasons, because it's an intro, but it's still a good song. Chaos Space Marine. It's the first song released as a single. This is the cover art for the single, and it's also on the booklet. Chaos Space Marine is a significantly different sound. It kind of has a bit of like a steampunk kind of theme to it in a way, I guess. But it's in a progressive pop direction. And I thought it was a really great song when I first heard it, but it's essentially one of the weaker songs off the album for me. But I still thought it was a great single. I still think it's a great song. But it's pretty catchy. I don't think it really, just hearing the other singles, I don't think it gave you a super big impression on what the rest of the album would sound like, which maybe is a good thing. But it still fits well with the rest of the album too, I think. It's just not really a song with a lot of atmosphere or a post-rock song, but it's still good. Maybe that doesn't mean it's a bad song. I think it's a great song. And the next one, Concorde, which I've listened to several times. Third song, released as a single. And hold on, here's the cover art for Concorde right here. And Concorde is a song with a significant build. It kind of has an indie rock and Midwest emo sound to it. And I guess I can say it has some parts that are pretty catchy, but it's more something that's quite poetic in a way. There's some really beautiful piano on it. And I just really love the build near the end with the Concorde, I die free this time. Then when the saxophone comes in, it's just gorgeous. I really love Concorde. It's easily one of the best songs released on the album. Well, one of the best songs on the album, easily for me. Definitely one of the best in the first half, easily for me. Actually, probably is the best song in the first half for me, if I had to say. Yeah. Concorde's a great song. Next one, so this one is Bread Song, which was the second song released as a single, and this is the cover art for Bread Song. It's on the booklet too, and then I can get out the sheet that has, this one's Bread Song. And Bread Song was originally played live at Queen Elizabeth Hall. And I thought it was a pretty good song. It's one I listened to a few times. Despite the silly name, the song seems to deal with a person dealing with a breakup and reflecting over things that were annoying to him and essentially missing them when his significant other leaves him, such as eating bread in his bed, stuff like that. The crumbs, like, don't eat your toast in my bed. But anyways, it has a bit of a minimalist sound to it. It has a lot of influence with post-minimalism. And I think they have credited artists like Steve Reich and stuff like that as an inspiration for the song structure. But it also has some elements of Midwest emo, and it does have some progression to it, but it's not really as intense as on some other songs like Concorde or Basketball Shoes. But anyways, let's see. But it does have a bit of like an indie folk sound to it as well. I have to say, indie folk sound, a bit of Midwest emo, a bit of post minimalism, but it also has some post rock influence on it too. And it's a very pretty song, one that kind of is one of the sadder songs off the album for me, but it's still a great song. I liked it a lot. I thought it was really great when they played it live too. Goodwill Hunting, which I would personally probably consider to be one of probably the weakest non-instrumental track, but I still think it's a great song. It's definitely a more indie folk direction, but it also features a bit of some electronics on it with some synthesizers opening up, and it has a very, very Midwest emo style in the guitar work. So like a very Midwest emo sound. I think some people haven't really heard it as much as I did, but I definitely hear the Midwest emo. I think it's very, very prominent on it. And the title is a reference to the film of the same name, Goodwill Hunting, that has Robin Williams in it, but it's has no relation to the film, despite being named off of it. The song makes some references to Billie Eilish on it. She had Billie Eilish style, moving to Berlin for a little while. I think the song seems to deal with what it sounds like is dealing with a long distance relationship, from what I hear from the lyrics, is what it sounds like to me. And it does have a really good build near the end, but it is a bit repetitive though. But it still, I think, has a build up that's worth it near the end. And Haldern, which is an interesting song. It's probably one of the album's more experimental tracks. And Haldern was originally called For the Evening, and it's called Haldern because they played it was a track they made up on the spot at something called the Haldern Pop Festival. And they made up the track on the spot, and obviously with the studio version they kind of added a bit more onto it though. No, that's like they added some violins that kind of has this motif that's heard throughout the album of this kind of sound. It features a lot of very significant piano work on it as well. It's a much better version than the live version, I'd say, even though I do think the group does some pretty good live recordings. I think this version of Haldern is significantly better, which I guess was called For the Evening originally, but I really love the piano work on it. I really think the violin stuff is a really, really good inclusion, and the thing near the end with the piano and the violin kind of weighing in on each other near the end, I thought was really interesting. And Isaac has some really good vocal delivery on it as well. Something I enjoyed quite a lot. And Mark's theme, which is an instrumental song, it was made for saxophonist uncle who died of COVID. He made that in dedication of him. It was originally played as the intro to Queen Elizabeth Hall. It's a instrumental track, as I mentioned, but it also is, because it's him playing the saxophone, it has very prominent jazz elements, but it also has some stuff with chamber music and some violin and piano. It's kind of used in it as well. It's a pretty song, but still, in my eyes, one of the album's weaker tracks, but still a really great song, but also quite calming in a way. The place where he inserted the blade, which kind of surprised me, but a lot of people, this is a fan favorite off the album, and I still do think it's one of the album's best, but some people have compared it to being better than Basketball Shoes, which I disagree with, but I still think it's easily one of the album's best. It's still a really great song. It's a progressive pop direction, which is the kind of style that was used on the first track minus the intro, Chaos Space Marine, but this one is done significantly better, even though Chaos Space Marine was done really good. This one is a 7-minute track, and actually the last 3 songs take up half of the album's length, which is interesting. But the place where he inserted the blade, lyrically, it kind of just has some sort of humorous storytelling of what sounds like someone who's bad at cooking, I guess, is kind of what it sounds like to me. But it has some really, really great vocal delivery. I love the da-da, da-da. And Isaac's vocal delivery on this is great as well. And I really love the piano work on it, as always. Violin stuff, the saxophone near the end is a very great build-up to it as well. Really kind of helps finish it off. And I just really, really love what this group does with vocal harmonies. I think they do it very, very well. And I feel like it's insanely good strong point for this group. And Snow Globes, which is the last song released as a single. It's the second last song off the album, and it's the cover art for Snow Globes. And this one's Snow Globes is I would say arguably the album's most experimental song, if I were to say. Snow Globes is a 9-minute track, and it does feature some progression, but it's also has a lot of repetition to it as well. But I still love every minute of it. It features some very, very loud and chaotic drumming, which I really love on it. And I really, really love the violin that comes in near the end. The song seems to have some sort of religious themes to it in the lyrical content. Like a lot of references to Jesus and God on it and all this stuff. And it makes a reference to the Killer's song, Mr. Brightside, he doesn't look anything like Jesus at all. That one line, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, the violin on it is probably my favorite part of the song when the violin comes in on Snow Globes. A lot of people really like the drumming, but that part definitely sells it for me. And most of the lyrics feature this, oh God, the weather, Henry knows, snow globes don't shake on their own. And as it goes on, Isaac's vocals become more sporadic and more intense as the song goes on, with the drumming just intensifying and all this stuff just going crazy. Really good song. And Basketball Shoes, which is the reason I pre-ordered this album the second I found out the song was having Basketball Shoes on it. I pre-ordered it. Glad I did, because this album is a masterpiece in my eyes. Basketball Shoes, fan favorite for the group. They would always play it as a closer to their live shows. And it also played on Queen Elizabeth Hall, which is where I fell in love with Basketball Shoes, when I heard it on Queen Elizabeth Hall. It might be my favorite song I've ever listened to, if I had to say. And they really, really blew it away on this studio version as well. Hi there. Okay, but anyways, Basketball Shoes is in a way almost like a medley. I don't know if you know what a medley is. It's kind of where it individual songs that like, and I've even described it as 5 songs in one, but it's like some individual songs that create one big motif, one big song when put together. So I guess one example would be the medley that takes up almost the entire side B of Abbey Road by the Beatles. You know, if you know, you probably know what I'm talking about. But this is just one track though. But I really love the intro. With the intro of the song, it starts out very, very slow with the intro, and some saxophone coming in until Isaac's vocals finally come in, and let's see. So in the beginning, it has some very prominent saxophone and also some very prominent piano work on it as well, and then when it goes into this Midwest emo style kind of guitar work with this and then it goes into this aggressive and heavy noise rock sounding, just with these other guitars coming in, building up on top of each other, which is just amazing. And it's one of the best things I've ever heard in post-rock, and it's not even the best moment of the song. And then after a long interlude, which is a much more aggressive version than on the live version, this one actually feels like it has a bit of a post-metal or drone metal type of sound with some very atmospheric and feedback heavy guitars, and then the choir comes in on this with this and then it finally goes to this build up that leads to one of the most mind-blowing things I've ever heard in music with this, when Isaac finally does this. And hear my bed sheets now with Charlie, I pray to forget. You know what I'm talking about. But anyway, so it goes into that, and then when the instruments all come together and all this stuff, Isaac's vocals become more intense until it finally goes into this gorgeous choir on top of this section with this choir, and then it sounds like there's these whistles that kind of come in. I can't whistle, but I don't know. You know what I mean if you heard the song. These whistles come in, and then I would say I kind of like the choir a bit more on the live version, but they did the choir really well in this too, I think. And then the choir and Isaac's screams I kind of like on the live version, but I still think they're very good here. But anyways, now, then it finally comes to Isaac's screams. And the choir on top of it is just so, so amazing. It's one of the most beautiful sounding things I've ever heard in music. I almost cried listening to this because I just thought it was so gorgeous. And then the sporadic improvisation and Isaac's whatever near the end as well, finishing it off. It's just, I don't think I could ask for any better. I wish they started barking when I was finished. But anyways, that's Ants from Up There. I love this album. I just felt like I needed to do a review for it. Thank you guys for watching.